How many times we see people around the edge of the green with a shot like this try and play that shot right there, and that is often the result. Guys, welcome back to Get Good at Golf. Today we're talking about what you need to know when you're chipping around the edge of the green and how you can improve going into this season, although I know the season has probably started for most of you. Guys, if you're new to the channel, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us on the journey to get good at golf. So how many times I see people from here instantly get your wedge out, so instantly go for your favorite wedge, whether it's your 60 degree, whether it's your 58, your 56, your 54. It's always one of those, it seems. It's never something with a little bit less loft, which might be the more consistent shot. So from here, we've got 4 balls now, and I'm going to play 4 different shots to try and get as close as I can to this extremely tight pin on the edge of the green. So if I'm trying to play with my 56, the first thing we need to think about is, right, I don't need to be throwing that all the way up in the air and trying to get it to land perfect on that one blade of grass to get it to go close. So I want you to think about how you would throw the ball from here if you was going to have a little bit of loft. And we're probably going to be thinking here that I'm going to be landing it around about halfway between me and the flag, even with a 56. That's going to be with this setup. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go nice and narrow with the stance, because one big issue we often see is stance gets too wide, and that encourages you more speed and shots that potentially go a little bit further, and also potentially those missed strikes maybe a little bit heavy, a little bit thin. So I want you a club width apart in the feet, and I want that left foot turned out nicely here, which is going to help you rotate. Again, we're going to go nice and square with that leading edge, but also from here you'll see I'm a lot closer to the golf ball. So I'm around about a foot away from that golf ball, and yes, you might say, well, if I'm a size 11, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit further away, but yes, that's not a problem. But we're not standing like I'm going to hit a full shot, because a lot of times we see people stood here and you don't know whether it's going to go 100 yards or 20 yards like this shot is. So I'm around about a foot away from the golf ball, nice and narrow, and here I'm going to treat it like an extended putting motion. So the shaft's a little bit taller, nearly matching the arms, and we're not really thinking even here that we're going to have much wrist hinge, because I don't need to try and add loft onto this. I just want to make sure that I'm keeping that club face nice and square. We're not having too much rotation open, we're not closing that down. And then from there, we can play that mid-trajectory. And you can see there, landed halfway, but had a little bit too much spin there. I caught that too well, but you see it's a very minimal motion there, which that might work perfect for something a little bit shorter. But for that shot there, I'm going to have to put more speed in. I'm going to have to make a longer swing. And we know with a longer swing comes more chance of error. So if I drop down to the next club, so a lot of people don't use the pitching wedge if we're thinking about a bump and run. Instantly here you would probably go to your 7-iron or your 8-iron or maybe even your 6-iron, which we'll get to shortly. But for me, this is probably the perfect club for this distance, because it's going to give us that little bit of loft, but then it's also going to not have as much spin and get that run out that we need, because we don't need much more past that shot to get it close. But again, I'm going to do that same setup. I'm going to get a little bit taller, a little bit closer, and again, feet are nice and close together. I can control my speed for my stance being narrow, and we're going to treat it like that extended putting motion again. And you'll see there, lands a similar distance, coming around nicely, but look at the distance control there. That is the perfect distance. So it's landed pretty similar to that 56. I've not had to put as much swing on there, but the distance control, because it's not spun, has gone pretty well. So this for me is a club that is underrated in your golf bag, and you need to look at using that a little bit more, because often we see people go straight to this club here. So they go to your 8-iron or maybe even your 7-iron, and you do everything right. So you might get a little bit closer, more than likely your stance is too wide. But if we get the right setup here, we're going to have to think about landing it shorter. And what I see from people when this happens is, if I'm trying to land it maybe 3 paces onto the green, we all start to slow down. We start to decelerate into that golf ball, and we often see that we catch maybe 6 inches behind, and the ball dribbles onto the green, and I've still got a 30, 40 foot putt, which we then 3-putt, and then you often blame putting, but it was this shot right here that cost you your score. So again, from here, even if I get that set up right, I'm going to go down the grip a little bit. So again, if we go longer club, go down the grip. And straight away there, much harder. I snagged that. The strike wasn't bad, but it just started to dig a little bit, and that's done not as well as that 56. So straight away, that is the worst shot of the bunch, well, except for the first one, which is what we see most of the time. But when we pick an 8-iron, that's what I see with either an 8-iron or a 7-iron. Just look at that strike. Strike, we can't complain at. Out of the middle of that club, that should come off okay, but it just got a little bit snagged in the ground. But what else do I see? So often the next club we go down to might be a 6-iron, and this is where people start to maybe not go as far as this, but the reason you go to that is because you've misstruck that 8-iron just like I did on the last hole. And then we start to see the opposite here, because yes, if we do get a good strike, it's very hard to judge that pace. So that is pretty good there. That's gone around about 3 foot, 4 foot away. So I would take that, because that's probably still better than maybe what we could do with a 56. So there is a time and place for that, but it's about consistency, because I have to be right down the grip, nearly on the shaft there. And that was a missed strike. How's that done? Again, 4 or 5 feet short, so it's starting to make it a little bit harder, because we might get that one that snags a little bit, just like that, and it comes off a little bit quick off the face. So what we've got is we've got one other option. For me, the club you need to practice with more is that pitching wedge. So a pitching wedge is going to be something that can be consistent. We can have it nice and square. If you want, you could potentially open that a little bit to get a little bit more loft depending on the shot you have got, because we're going to get a little bit of loft, but we're going to get that run out, and we're not going to probably tense up as much as we potentially do with that 56 or with your 60. We often see people start to strangle that grip. It gets ever so tight, and then from there, the motion gets very quick. We don't control that low point, but there's a club you can go to from here that's probably the easiest one to hit if you've got one in your golf bag, and most people will, because you can either have a hybrid or a fairway wood to play this shot. So we're going to go with a hybrid here, because what we've got when we come in with a hybrid is we've got the bottom of that club, we've got all of that as bounce. So we're going to make sure that even if you are somebody who caught the ground a little bit before, you're still going to make contact with the club. Same with the fairway wood, but what do we need to do and how do we need to change? Very similar to as if we go to your longer clubs, we want to come down that grip, probably gripping even on the shaft. But one thing we've got when it comes to a hybrid is we do have a hotter face, the same with a fairway wood. So what does that mean? Because you'll probably think that that's going to come off too fast, go too far, but that's not. That potentially can happen, but we can now make a smaller motion. Because that face is a little bit hotter, we can make a smaller motion, and we know in a smaller motion there's less that can potentially go wrong. So again, treat it like a putter, and we can get that running up there nice and easy. And that is just outside of that 6-iron for the first shot. And this is one for you to get out here and practice. One for you to maybe get down on your chipping green or around your putting green and just start to play this. If you're on an upslope just like we are here, start to practice these shots, because it could be potentially one that really saves you out on the golf course. So don't always go to that 56 or your 60 degree. Start to think about what other clubs you have in your bag, what can be the best to get the ball as close as possible with as much ease as possible. Guys, if you do that, you will get good at golf, and we'll see you again very soon.